Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch and enjoyed the meal. So once again, I welcome you all to the Symposium on Competitiveness in North Indian states to achieve inclusive growth. We now start with session 3 of the Symposium, focusing on opportunities for entrepreneurs and MSMEs. May I request the presence of the eminent speakers and Honorable Chair on the stage. I would like to invite Mr. Rajesh Batra, Head Center for MSME, Institute of Corporate Affairs, on stage. The role of lead presenter is being played by me. I would like to request the presence of the panelists. Mr. Pankaj Gupta, President, Industries Association of Uttarakhand. Ms. Nazia Yusuf Izzuddin, who's President to World Integrity Center India and Senior Vice Chairperson also to FICCI Flow Uttarakhand. Mr. Yogesh Sagar, Vice President, Mohali Industries Association. And Mr. Dilnawaz Khan, Founder and Chief Evangelist, Co-Design Labs. I now request the Honorable Chair to take forward the proceedings. An internal instruction for all the panelists that we would ring the first buzzer at the end of 6th minute and the second one at the end of 8th minute. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me give you my introduction. My name is Rajesh Batra. I'm heading Center for MSME, and I'm from Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. You must be thinking what I'm doing as a head center for MSME. So I would like to give you a little idea what we do at IICA. We work at 3 levels. One is at the policy level. Any law related to corporate affairs has to come through 2 legal ministries. One is Ministry of Corporate Affairs, another is Ministry of Finance. So whenever Ministry of MSME or any other ministry recommends a law to our ministry that there should be a law for the bankruptcy courts, insolvency law, mediation, so that comes to IICA. Then IICA, different centers and schools call a lot of roundtable discussions, a lot of meetings they do, a lot of stakeholder consultation they do. Then finally we draft the law, submit to our ministry. And 3rd level which we work, that is at the capacity building work. It is our mandate to meet the capacity building at the corporate level, SMEs, private sector, including PSUs. So today I have been given the responsibility for chairing this session, and I'm giving you a little idea that this session will focus on identifying opportunities for entrepreneurs and MSMEs in North Indian states. What regulatory challenges do they face in EODB, and how can we arrive at the practical solution so as to allow MSMEs a positive environment for growth? So in this session, we are going to address certain issues. Which are those issues? I'm just, for the reference of panelists as well as for the audience, I'm going to give certain idea. We are going to address certain issues like, first issue is MSMEs, are we defining them with the right way? Are we defining the definition of MSME in the right way? Because as you know, there is a limit of investment in plant and machinery. And this, sometimes there is a lower investment limit, which is a hurdle in technology upgradation and capacity building for MSMEs. So on one side, we want that MSME should adopt renewable energy, MSME should adopt the technology, green technology. On the other side, there is a very limited investment limit in definition. So is there, whether we should enhance the limit, what should be done? So that needs to be found out. Otherwise, you know, MSMEs will always look for subsidy, and they will not invest in machinery because they will always be afraid that our status will go of this mass industry if they will go for heavy investment machinery. Second question which we want to discuss is how can the availability of felt elements made sure? Finance, electricity, labor, transport. So this is very important discussion point because there are many other points which are related to the availability of infrastructure like water, power, road. It's still a big issue. Flow of funds for the MSME sector is still a big issue. Access to equity capital is still a big issue. Right skill set for specific areas like manufacturing, services, marketing, that is still a big issue. We don't have skilled labor. Unavailability of industrial plots in the Industrial Development Corporation, that is also one of the issue. And then there is a raw material at the competitive cost, that is also a big problem, and cost-effective supply chain is a big issue. So we will discuss all these aspects in the availability of felt elements. Then a third issue which we will discuss is how do we address the governance issues impeding the growth. First of all, what is governance? But here we'll talk governance in a different manner. Governance in IICA, governance means accountability and transparency system, independent monitoring and evaluation, participation of target beneficiaries. But when we talk about the governance issues which are impeding the growth of MSME, we are going to talk about in terms of business regulations. In India's federal system, these business regulations, they are enacted and implemented by all the three tiers of the government, that is central government, state government, municipalities. So when we want access to utilities, power, road, we want environmental clearance, we want labor laws, we want to have commercial taxes clearance. So all these things are dealt by in the domain of state laws and local authorities. Then we have many compliances associated with central agencies for direct tax codes. Then with the advent of GST, we feel that there is a need from the government side to come with simplified procedures in the existing regulatory environment, as it was discussed in the morning also. Then multiple registration of MSME, GST, for PAN, for IEC, all these issues are the governance issues. Then other acts like Contract Labor, Factory Act, Central Labor Act, EPF, ESI, land acquisition, industrial disputes, insolvency. So these are all the issues which are related with the governance issues. And finally, we will discuss what measures would incentivize business to scale up in size. That is also a very important discussion point, because still in India there is a cumbersome procedure, there is a delay in fund disbursement, there is a need for time-bound exemption, relaxation for startups. Issue of collateral security is still a big issue, high interest rate is still a big issue, delayed payment despite the MSME Act is still an issue, then access to equity capital, it is still a big issue. Then good programs, good schemes like CGSTSI, CLCC, they are not able to achieve that level which we expect. So I think they need to be modified for adoption. Then the study needs to be carried out, what is the likely impact on MSME with respect to bankruptcy code and insolvency. Then a state has to find a way that there should be a conversion of all the leasehold industrial plots to freehold basis. There should be a way, once we see the entrepreneur's performance for 5 years, I think a way should be found by the state government. How agricultural land can be converted for industrial use by micros and small land, that is also one of the big issue. And development of marketing development park, that is a big issue. State government will have to find out the land parcels. Then Mudra, it was discussed in the morning. Then RBI has fixed a 90 days limit that after 90 days the overdue payments unit is declared NPA. That is also one of the very serious issue. And then MSME-centric NBFCs are required. That is one of the action which is required. Then if any MSME comes to stock exchange, at the Bombay Stock Exchange, still there are only 218 companies listed. There is some cost involved if they have to list themselves. Is there any government subsidy? Government can bear some cost. So all these issues we are going to discuss it here. So now I will like the panelists. And we have a total 4 panelists. We have Mr. Sagar, Vice President of the Mohalla Industry Associations. Then we have Ms. Nazia, then Mr. Pankaj Gupta, and Mr. Dilnawaz. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Batra. So before we move on to hear what our panelists have got to say, I have a brief presentation to make to just set out the stage for all the panelists and also for the participants. Thank you. Can we have the presentation on, please? Okay. So, my presentation will focus upon what per se are the opportunities that we are looking at for MSMEs in India, opportunities in terms of the targets that we want to achieve. But given that, what is it that we have achieved till now and how far do we want to go? And keeping all of that in mind, what is impeding us from achieving what we want to achieve? So this is what my presentation will focus upon, and then I will set out a few points for discussion for our discussants here. So let's start with what is it that we want to achieve. So a KPMG CII study titled The New Wave Indian MSME states that the MSME opportunity is to develop entrepreneurship and support growth led by innovation over the next decade by increasing the share of MSME contribution to GDP to 15% by 2020, generate employment levels to the extent of 50% of the overall employment, increase share of MSME contribution across all the key sectors, both in public and private industry sectors, and fulfill increasing domestic demand, growth in exports, and also work towards import substitution. Now let us try understanding what is it that we have achieved till now in terms of numbers. So the all India contribution of MSMEs in the national GDP currently is limited to 8%. However, we want to reach the level of 15% by 2020. The employment statistics reveal that 36 million units of MSMEs in India employ 80 million people. The share of MSMEs in total manufacturing output is 45%, and the total contribution to exports is 40%. The data has been collated from a document titled MSME at a Glance, prepared by the Ministry of MSME. Now, let us try understanding what is it that impedes us from achieving the target that we have planned to achieve. And this has been discussed time and again over the course of, say, 1.5 days since yesterday. So we have listed down the challenges in 3 components, and looking at policy and regulation, information capabilities, and access to felt elements, which has been already talked about in the session 1 of the event. So looking at policy and regulation, the major issue that MSMEs today face is high regulatory compliance burden. I would take a minute to describe a little about that, and I would want to do that through 3 examples. So first is that the Niti Aayog and IDFC came up with a report on ease of doing business in 2017, which clearly states that there's a skewed distribution of enterprise size in the manufacturing sector, which could be linked to the differences in business regulatory environment faced by large and small enterprises. And there is a lot of literature which clearly states that regulatory hurdles have kept Indian firms artificially small. So, because of regulatory compliances, the smaller firms do not want to grow larger and enter the domain of adhering to larger or bigger regulatory compliances. The other example that I would want to quote is has got to do with the geographical distribution of startups. So again, the Niti IDFC report says that there are around 63% of young manufacturing startups which are located in the states of Maharashtra, Telangana, and Gujarat. And the point to be noted is that none of these are part of the North Indian states. And these states are essentially the states with high per capita income and with greater ease of doing business. And there's a perception amongst the startups that these are the states which offer lesser regulatory compliance to them. And another important example that I would like to quote is has got to do with a CUTS project on cost-benefit analysis on Rajasthan Shops and Commercial Establishments Act, where we are working with Rajasthan government. And one of the key findings of the research is that there are very few small-scale shops and establishments who have registered themselves under the Act, which is the Shops and Commercial Establishments Act. And the ones that have done have only done to avail the benefits associated to current account opening. Apart from that, the other important thing is that there are, say, a list of compliances that establishments are supposed to adhere to under the Act, and which includes maintaining of a lot of registers and records, which small-scale establishments are not doing. And there are very few large or medium-sized establishments which are doing that. So this indicates towards the fact that the Act per se for small-scale establishments is redundant. And there are only big establishments which are, adhering to the compliances, and again, the regulatory compliances so they are valid only for the big establishments. Now going ahead, other, say, sort of policy and regulation related issues include lack of quality control standards, which again becomes an issue when we talk about globalization and, market access in the global world. There are difficulties faced by MSMEs when we talk about exiting the market, and that has already been talked about in the previous sessions. And this especially stands valid in case of sick establishments or sick firms. In terms of information and capabilities, the MSMEs lack knowledge, lack knowledge in terms of marketing facilities, and they lack knowledge in terms of information about latest technologies. A lot of them also lack innovation capabilities, and this has already been talked about in the previous sessions, that with the new technologies coming in, the MSMEs are not able to, cope up with the change, and there is something we need to do about that. And there is certainly a lack of awareness about government policies amongst the MSMEs. They do not know if there are incentives being given by the government, what acts are they supposed to, or say what regulatory compliances they are supposed to adhere to under different acts. Another major issue which has already been covered in session 1 is the access to felt elements, and there is unavailability of industrial plots under industrial development corporations of different states. It appears right now that the approach of land allotment under industrial development corporations of different states is limited to large-scale industries, and it doesn't really involve approaching MSMEs per se. There's lack of availability of skilled labor, and there's lack of adequate raw material in the supply chain and in the export market. The data has been collated from the MSME Development Institute reports of different districts which covered by the 6 North Indian states. Now, moving ahead, after a round of discussion, again over 1.5 days, and the challenges I brought forth, and also what the chair mentioned already, to my understanding, there are some of the important issues we should discuss and deliberate upon through our eminent panelists. And the first and foremost is the definition of MSMEs. Are we defining them the right way when it comes to, say, the global definition? So in India, the definition of MSMEs is limited to the capital equipment cost. But interestingly, what has been found out that various other developing economies, such as Brazil, such as South Africa, they define their MSMEs as per the turnover, as per the headcount, which matches the global standard. So do we want to rethink about that? Second question is, how can the availability of felt elements be made sure for MSMEs? How do we address the governance issues impeding the growth of MSMEs? So when we talk about governance issues, they could relate to things like, say, transfer of subsidy. And transfer of subsidy has been a major issue for MSMEs, that they keep waiting for subsidies to be transferred, but it doesn't happen. What measures would incentivize businesses to scale up in size? I already mentioned in the previous slide that due to regulatory compliance burden, the MSMEs do not want to, increase their size or scale up in terms of size. So what do we do about that? How can MSMEs be made domestically and globally competitive? How can entrepreneurship in rural India be tapped? So in the previous session, we talked about a mass of, say, labor force moving from agricultural sector or moving from rural India to other sectors. But can we think about utilizing that workforce in say for doing business around agro related businesses or food processing industries? Very quickly, the very last question, of course, the most important question, is that how can we have a gender neutral entrepreneurial culture developed in amongst, say, North Indian states? So I would like to conclude with that, and over to the panelists. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah. So we each of the, as per the schedule which has been given to me, each panelist will be given 15 minutes. And first of all, we'd like to start with Mr. Pankaj Gupta ji. He is a most active president of the Active Association of Uttarakhand. And in my life, I signed my first MOU with Pankaj Gupta ji. So I would request him to please throw some light.
Thank you, Mr. Batra, and I would also like to thank and compliment CUTS for organizing this wonderful workshop today. I had something in mind, but while after the dinner, after the lunch, I was just standing and I was listening to a few of my friends sitting there, and they were basically addressing some MSME related problems, I think, which are basically very common to all of us. One of the issues which they mentioned was about land. I think, Kanika, you also mentioned about land. Uttarakhand, one of the speakers earlier in the morning also talked about shortage of land. What we have discussed right now and what we are coming up with in Uttarakhand, and particularly for the micro and small sector, is a flatted factory shed complex. That's going to be integrated factory shed, and we are coming out with 100 square meter sheds for the industries vertically. We are not going horizontally, but we are constructing them vertically. That's going to bring down the cost. You were mentioning about 2 crores of land available and all those things. How can MSMEs afford those? So why don't you create a group, go vertical, buy a chunk of land, create facilities there, let it be a plug-and-play facility. So that is what we are doing up in the hills in Uttarakhand. So those models can be translated across country, and I think that can take care of your you'll get a developed infrastructure that will take care of your land, and that is going to bring down the cost also. So one of the other thing you were discussing about the logistics, getting logistics trucks, that was also one of the big problems in my industrial area. We had around 20 industries getting together. Every industry used to source 1 truck per day, and the cost used to be enormous because it was a demand-supply situation. We as a group, 20 of us got together, and daily we are sourcing 20 trucks. The cost has come down by 25%. So you need to create a group there. So you have to be a little innovative as far as because the market is not going to change. We have to change the market. How we can do that? That is important for MSMEs to take forward. Definition is one of the first points that is mentioned here. I would like to basically define MSMEs in 3 categories. One is MSMEs who are working for livelihood. That is in the lower strata, below 25 lakhs. And they are basically all unorganized and in the informal sector, and right now they are getting no support from anywhere. They are not able to access to any of the policies that are there. So we need to look at them, and they are the biggest numbers as far as the micro enterprises right now are concerned. They are also taking care of your gender neutrality. So we need to look at those. So MSMEs who are working for the livelihood, then MSMEs who are working for the domestic market, because they don't need those global certifications and other things. So how we can support them? That's another thing. And then the third, MSMEs who want to penetrate the global market. For them, like we were discussing at one of the speakers also mentioned about the ocean rim countries, Indian ocean rim countries. That's a huge group, and they say we have 100 billion trade deficit because they are so out of these countries. We are sourcing from outside from other countries, so we have a huge market potential there. But the problem what we face when we talk to pharma people there, they said for each country we have to go for a separate audit, separate certification, and there are separate set of rules for each country. Why don't we work and try and get a common certification, common auditing and other procedures done so that we can basically access those. Let it be the most stringent one. We are ready to face that. But give us one. Not that if I want to supply to 32 countries, then I have to go to each country separately. There's a huge cost involved, huge time involved. Everything is so try and work out that. So MSMEs, I think, can successfully do things, lot of things there. Felt, I think, has already been discussed in a big way in the morning. Then about the governance issues, subsidies, refunds, yes, it's a big issue. So I'll give you one small example, audit. We are getting a third-party audit done through a chartered accountant. And after that, there are 5 or 6 separate departments who are sending their auditors to audit my accounts again. The same books of accounts are being audited again and again. Service tax, central excise, now GST has come in, the PF department, the income tax department, so many departments, the banks. So why, when I have a third-party audit report already present with me, why so many departments are again? This is a sheer harassment. This is a big governance issue which needs to be addressed for the MSME sector. Why don't you try and make my life? This is what I want, a policy advocacy from the cuts. Why don't you take it forward? If we are talking in terms of ease of doing business, this is where I am looking at, so that my life becomes easy. RBI 90 days Basel, this thing is always told to us. Under GST, you have a 180 day, this thing 6 months, if the credit period that is allowed to you. So why don't we have this thing, instead of 90 days, it should be 180 days, I think, before an account is declared as NPA. So that's needed, because we are running short of working capital. The large industries don't pay us in time, and you have failed to basically implement the Delayed Payment Act. You have those provisions in place, but you have failed to implement them. So give us some relaxation somewhere. That's another important point. Environment, labor, credit, technology, institutions. AICT is giving permission to set up institutes, but why don't they make it mandatory to associate with industries? At the time of giving them approvals, it should be made mandatory to work with industries. Don't look at industries as employers only. We are not there to give you jobs. Yes, we are there to give you jobs, but there are other ways we can work with you closely. Why don't you ask these institutes to come up with live projects and work with us? They are not coming to us. So how do you expect new products, new innovations, new R&D and everything to take place unless and until you understand industries? You see, I visited one of the Chinese university in China, and the best part was they were given an Apple mobile, and they said, you break it and do the reverse engineering on that. Punjab is good at doing reverse engineering, but the industries are doing it on their own. Tell me how many institutes are supporting that reverse engineering initiatives of Punjab? None. So why aren't we asking the universities to come forward and support us as far as this reverse engineering and other innovations and R&D is concerned? So that is the need of the hour. If we are talking in terms of technology, new technology, modern technology, so let the institutes come, and that is how institutes are also going to get capacity built. Logistics are one thing I want to tell. When my truck is moving, why the policeman at every barrier is stopping my truck? Industrial goods should not be holed up on the road. Every chowki, naka, everyone is my bab of that truck. Why that is happening? You are delaying my materials, you are increasing my cost. Market is another thing. We are developing a model called Dev Market, and this model is only for the producers and products of Uttarakhand, and it has 3 platforms. One is virtual market, one is your online platform, and the third one is we are putting up physical stores. And all these physical stores will be manned by the people from Uttarakhand and are only going to sell products and producers of Uttarakhand and under one brand name. This is how we want to support the market initiatives for the small enterprises. And the last point I would like to make is the self-help groups. If we want to promote women entrepreneurship, self-help groups should be supported by the banks, which is not being done right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj Gupta ji. You have really given us insight, in particular about Uttarakhand and MSME, and some of the points which I noted from your discussion. You talked about the flatted factory complex. Of course, there should be more and more in every state. There should be more and more marketing development parks should come. It should be based on the plug and play model, so that MSME should get it and they can invest their plant and machinery and run the business. That is, of course, one of the essential requirement. Audit requirement, because this is, I would like to advocate here, because if we talk about the MSMEs, they are divided into proprietorship firm, partnership firms, and private limited companies. And presently the governance norms, the governance codes, they are only established, with keeping in mind the large corporates who are listed companies. So only those SMEs which are registered under the Company Act 1956, only they are supposed to follow the guidelines which are issued by Company Act. Only they are supposed to follow the Institute of Chartered Accountants guidelines, those standards. Of course, if these SMEs can follow these governance guidelines, it will help them enhancing the credit limit. It will reduce the disputes. So there is a need, and MSMEs don't have trained taxation experts, trained manpower. So it is very difficult for them to meet the audit requirements, many compliance requirements, labor laws requirements. He is always struggling, day to day in firefighting. Then how can we expecting that due to these reasons, he is struggling with the various notices, various inspection. I feel that in today's time, while I talk about the present government, I think this is the time that MSMEs are transitioning now. Now they are in the transition phase. Because earlier what happened, the Inspector Raj was there. and they were always busy in so many compliances. With the advent of GST, I think so many taxes have been merged now. So we hope so that in future there will be less compliance burden. And the other points which Pankaj ji mentioned, as I also mentioned about delayed payment, yes, delayed payment, that issue needs to be addressed. And NPA, yes, after 90 days, immediately you can't declare MS, because he will always be under pressure to pay his installment rather than his day-to-day business or running working capital. So that's a very big issue which he also pointed out. Thank you. And then he also talked about some gap between industry and academia. Of course, there is a lot of difference between the world of work and education. That's a very good point. And then he talked about logistics. Yeah, logistics is a very effective supply chain management. Logistics is required. So with these words, I would like to conclude. And now I will request Mr. Sagar, being a vice president of the Mohali Industry Association, to please give your viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Batra, and Kurt's given us the opportunity to speak on the front of this dais. See, Mohali Industry Association is a very old association. I'll just take 1 minute to explain it, where normally the associations are affiliated with one components or with one trade, but our industry is with various small, medium and large are the members, and no restricted to one trade. And being next to the capital of Punjab and Haryana, we have a better interaction with the government. So here my points comes with, first is that regarding listing of stock exchange limit. See, MSE, there's a law that MSME can get themselves registered with stock exchange and they can get their public issues. But the limit is 50 crores, which is, I think, is on a quite higher side. For MSME, it should be reduced to at least 25 or 30 crores so that more people can participate, more MSMEs can participate, and so that they can avail funds at a very low rate of interest or without rate of interest. Next point comes is regarding the upgradation of industry. As other panelists have also said, that now the time has come, 25 lakh is a very small limit for MSME. If you want to upgrade your technology, you want to upgrade your machinery, 25 lakh is a very less limit. As my other panelist has said, it should be either with a turnover or with anything else. But this 25 lakh has to be increased. Third point comes is the acts which has been implemented by the government. Now I'll give you a small example of pollution board. Now, any industry MSME, they're required to take a permission from pollution board. Now, MSME doesn't know what are the rules and regulations. We also want that our environment should be clean. We should work under a very clean atmosphere. We go to them, their touts are sitting there. They tell us to put the equipment, which they have a cut with the systems. So we do not know whether we spend money on that, whether the system is going to really help us. We put the system so that we get a signal from the pollution board, we get a certificate from the pollution board, and we run the industry. We may not be able to help in improving the environment. So there should be some system, maybe a site available where we can go through and see what equipment we require to put. Sometimes we invest money which is not required to put, or sometimes we put equipment which is not required to be put. Then in the morning also we have talked about no industry can survive without skill development. I was attending a meeting with our Chief Minister of Punjab, Mr. Captain Amrinder Singh, a few days back. He has said it, and it is really clear said it. Our government schools, if you compare with the government schools and public schools, government schools the results are 50% are not even 33% marks are taking. Why? Why can't we give them support? Government cannot support them. So what should we do is, MNCs like Mahindra or other, they have come up. They are going to support the schools. They are going to give them the basic education what we are getting in the public schools. So that when our children passed from matric or 12th, they are ready to compete with the other people. Now I'll give you a very small example. There is a gentleman in Hyderabad. He has his own entrepreneurship. When he started his business, he needed skilled labor. which he find there is not available over there. So what he did is, instead of depending on the government, one of my colleagues is sitting here, he has visited there also. He started his own skill development. He created taken a small place in a village. He took about 25 children from the village. He made a hostel for them. He used to start from the early morning. They used to make their own breakfast, clean their own place. He started giving training to them. To cut it short, today all the students which goes there, they are employed before they join it. Why? Because now the institutions, they are supporting them. They are giving now funds to them. They are ready to pay for the students. The students come out from there with a highly skilled things. If a student, after doing 12th, he takes a 3-month course or 4-month course, it's not going to help him. That's what government is doing it. He's not going to become a skilled laborer. And being in Punjab, we are a Punjab agro-based industry. If you remember, 30 years ago or 35 years ago, there was a acute shortage of wheat. We used to borrow from USA. Punjab came. Now we are surplus with the wheat and all other exports. But the trend has changed. Technology has changed. Now we have to come out of that. We have an agro-based industry. We need to get ourselves connected where MSME administration can help us is to get agro-based industry, which can really help us to become global, because basic raw material is easily available and Punjabis are real big entrepreneurs. Now regarding the rules and regulations, now we come to PF and ESI. Most of the MSEM employees, they don't want to get them registered. Not that they don't want. What ESI provides them? When an accident happens or something happens, they have to go from one post to the other pillar. They have to fill so many forms. Still they don't get the proper aid. Why can't we have organized something with the private organizations? Maybe a private hospital, or maybe a national insurance companies, or maybe anything where we can get a group insurance done instead of doing ESA, or so that our employees, they feel secured. They can get treatment when they're required, or when they need money, they can get the money back. Another point which comes to me in my mind is that in MSME, there is a lot of energy wastage, especially where furnaces and all equipments are required. So we need to do energy audit. For that, we need some funds. There is a scheme, but as they have been told, there are a lot of auditing that has to be done after getting the auditing done. What is the fun of it? There should be some scheme where if an industry is getting an energy audit done and they're saving, the raw material is energy, and they're saving 40 to 50% energy, they should get some subsidy on that. Along with that, as we are sitting very far off from the port, if we really want to do exports, other business, we need a fit subsidy or some system where we can subsidize our raw material, because raw material also come from different, away from Punjab, and if we want to export, we have to go to the Bombay port or Calcutta port or some other port. So that increases our cost. So we need something, government needs a policy where we can get some subsidy regarding land. Now, regarding raw material, now suppose MSME wants to go to a export business. I will talk about steel. There is so much fluctuation in the steel price. Today, whatever we are registering yourself, we are making a contract with foreigners, the steel prices are something, but once it comes to execution, the price increases. So we should have something to do with it there, where our government can regularize and give some 3 months, 6 months fixed price regarding it. Well, IT is a date of our IT industry. MSME is no far off of that. We cannot depend on a company like Infosys or big industries. Setup has to be started. For that, our government is ready to support them, but we need some support from MSME. Will be pleased to inform you that Mohali was the first who signed a cluster regarding lean manufacturing, sanitary manufacturing, all other these top things. These clusters can really help us in improving our business, and we can grow. I can assure you our contribution can grow in a production, in economy-wise, if these sports are given to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sagar. In your presentation, you have really raised some of the relevant points, and some of the points which I have taken from your discussion, you have talked about the SME stock exchanges. Of course, you are right, because right now at Bombay Stock Exchange, BSE SME platform is there. There are only 218, for the last 3 years, only 218 companies are registered there. One of the reasons is he rightly pointed that there is a limit 50 crore. That is very high, it should be reduced. Another thing which I feel, and it should be reduced, and what 3 crores now.
2012, Dr. Manmohan Singh got it reduced to 3 crores.
Okay.
Now, even 3 crore person, though he may be from SME, he can get it related.
I think it's not under company.
It is there. In BSE it is.
But what I observed that one of the, it just slightly came in my mind that even if MSME is listed there, suppose they are there for equity, but what is the guarantee that people invest in his IPO? So I think that there should be some encouragement by the government. There should be some income tax exemption. If anyone who will invest in the IPO of SME, some, like there is a 1.5 lakh income tax exemption is given. So some exemption income tax should be given to anyone who would like to invest in the IPO of the SME. That is my personal feeling. Second is that he talked about the upgradation of industries, and that yes, the limit should be announced in 25 lakh is very low, and only then MSME will be able to invest, will be willing to invest in higher technology. He talks about pollution norms, they are very strict. But I just slightly, because nowadays we have been conducting a lot of, we are creating with QCI a lot of, we are creating pool of consultants, master trainers. And the JDD scheme is, MSMEs are getting subsidies. And they are only considering quality and environment parameters and energy wastage. If I think if MSMEs can avail that, it is ultimately it is giving you knowledge about how to apply quality management tools, how to apply knowledge management tools. So I think MSMEs can avail this subsidy and this zero defect, and they can avail this scheme, and you will be able to do a lot of improvement in terms of quality, environment parameters, energy wastage. Then agro-based industries, because there is one point, how can entrepreneurship in rural India can be tapped? Punjab is a good example, because half of the population is still living in rural India. Our 50% of working active population is still in agriculture, 20% in manufacturing, and only 30% in service sector. So if there should be, I think, a baseline, Cuts International with IACA can take out this work, a baseline survey should be carried out, that what are the resources available in villages, what are the skilling available in villages, because there is a youth population between 15 years old to 25 years old, and that is a dividend of our country. If we can tap this youth, and government can spend money in already they are spending a lot of money in skilling, so why not they can establish in all these 600 districts of India, they can establish one material growth center or skill development material growth center at the cluster of 10 villages, so that youth can be trained there, and youth can produce those materials which can be supplied to nearby industries. I think only then entrepreneurship in rural India can be tapped, and agro-based industry is one of the very big example. And so that point you have really covered, which I left it. And then raw material at competitive cost, of course, it is a big issue. And the cluster lean management, I again say that lean management is also included in JDD scheme. If you can implement that, you are getting a very good subsidy. So I think something good can happen now. So with this, I will conclude. Now I will request Mr. Dilnawaz Khan to express your viewpoint. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dilnawaz, and I'm from Jaipur. The entire discussion from 2 days has been around MSMEs and small-scale businesses, but I think a very important perspective was left, which was around primarily around startups. That too, about typically technology startups. So I come from Jaipur and I've been a very active member of the Jaipur startup ecosystem, specifically the entire Rajasthan startup ecosystem. And I personally I'm also working with a lot of startups, small scale businesses and MSMEs. So I might be able to give a lot of insights around how those things are being tackled and how those problems in that area are being solved. So first of all, let me begin by thanking all of you, especially Kutch, for inviting me to this program. The topic of the entire subject is competitiveness of North Indian states to achieve inclusive growth. And I believe that growth can only happen when the entire small scale startups and everybody, falls under a common stream. It's not just for the large industries to move ahead, but also the small scale startups. I have been a startup guy through and through. I have been into this industry from past 10 years, and I have a personal belief that the best way to solve any problem is to build a startup around it. If you look at a problem and build a self-sustainable program or a startup around it, I think we will be able to solve that problem in the long run. We, as a young India, everybody has been talking about we are the youngest country. We can't depend on government for everything. It's easier to crib about and talk that hey, the government is not doing that thing. But I think we as individuals also can do a lot of things because I think we all are actually privileged enough to be in this room, eating such a delicious lunch and sitting in this room and talking about all these things. I think we are already privileged enough, and we can definitely do a lot of things as an organization, as a body. Although there are a lot of problems at multiple levels, but yes, together I believe we can solve them. So I want to give a very broader insight first. I want to talk about a macro point and then move on to the specific subjects that we're going to talk about today. See, I believe startups or small businesses, education, skill, and this entire ecosystem, all of these things go hand in hand. I was talking to a couple of people outside during lunch, and we were having a discussion, a very interesting insight that entrepreneurship is considered to be the last aspect when we talk about opportunities for young people, right? Anybody who's not able to achieve anything or is considered to be a failure takes up the path of entrepreneurship. I'll quote one example from my interaction with a lot of academic institutions, because I run a company which also do advisory services for a lot of academic institutions, corporates. When you go to typical college, specifically an engineering college, a typical college people and the owners of that college, they have a mindset that placements are okay. We're already having good placements. Let's do something for people who are not able to get placed. And what is the option for people who are not able to get placed? Let's help them become entrepreneurs. And this is the most shocking aspect of the education mindset that we have in this country. I'm not even talking about the difference into the industry-academia connect. That's an altogether different point and different ball game that has been already discussed, since the morning, that the current education system do not fall in line with the current industry requirements, both from the MSME angle or from the technology companies angle. If you look at the syllabus, it's absolutely outdated. But I'm talking about the current mindset into the education system, that they do not even want to touch the guys who are being placed. They don't want to encourage them to become entrepreneurs, but want to do something who are not even able to do anything. And my counter argument to these guys, I'm just sharing my insight. So my counter argument to these guys is that the entrepreneurs come from the top 1% of the pyramid and not bottom 10%. When I picked up entrepreneurship after my college, after finishing my degree in college education, I already had 4 admissions from US. I had 2 jobs in hand. I was already running a company from 2 years, and then I picked up entrepreneurship, thinking that yes, these are some things I can always go back and do. I can always go back and do GRE and get a US scholarship, and I can move out any day I want. So that mindset of the educators, I think, is the biggest hurdle into the entire growth scenario right now. Specifically talking about from the North India states perspective, this is little less when you talk about the southern states, specifically the education curriculum there. So it is there, but I think there has to be some way we should be able to solve it and tackle it. So as I was saying, that the entire ecosystem has to be modified, and there are multiple pillars which have to be modified and corrected if we have to give an inclusive growth to the entire northern area. Education skills, of course, are one part of it. Secondly, let me also talk about policy here. So all of us have been talking about the definition of MSMEs and definition of startup, and also about the policies. I think even if you talk about the startup policy or the policies around startups, I think that there's a lot of gap in between implementation of announcement of those policies and implementation of those policies. Today, almost, even before the Startup India policy, which was announced back in 16th of January 2016, even prior to that, around 4 to 5 states had their own policy, and post that a lot of states have come out and launched their own policies. For example, Bihar has recently announced a policy, Maharashtra has announced a policy, but the implementation on ground is very weak when it comes to the policy implementation, even for startups. All these policies gives tax relaxation, fund availability to startups, and multiple areas, but there's a huge gap into the guidelines of the policy and implementation. So that is another critical area that has to be looked upon. Moving on to the competitiveness point, where we talk about the global and domestic competitiveness and global competitiveness, I think I would want to refer back to my similar point, which I said earlier, that the brain drain is the main problem here. Wherein, so I'll give you this example. All of us know, if you look at the country geographically, the major IT hubs of the country, or the major technology hubs of the country, are in Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, Chennai, Hyderabad. These are the major technology areas and technology hubs. Why I understand it very deeply, because I run a company which gives a platform to technology guys to connect with clients. And when we started working and when we launched the platform, the guys coming from the northern states were not that technically equipped who would deliver the right quality work to clients. And eventually, when we started the survey, and it's been around 2 years now, when we started the survey and when you onboarded people, guys coming from the southern states, Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, I think they were beating the North Indian guys at any point in time. I had a small discussion with somebody yesterday wherein I was talking that if you are, let us say, a lawyer or a chartered accountant or any other professional, you can, be anywhere in the country in practice. But if you're a technology guy, those are the areas you have to be in. You can't. It's a reality. We need to agree upon that we do not have a major IT company back in Chandigarh or a major IT company back in Rajasthan or all these areas. So this intra-state brain drain is another critical issue that has to be solved somehow, and this will only happen once we're able to establish high growing and high growth startups around North Indian states, and that will only be these startups will only be able to survive once this policy implementation on ground comes into place. Another very interesting insight and a very interesting point that we are trying to address in this particular panel is about rural entrepreneurship tapped in rural India. So I was a part of one of the programs that Startup Oasis, which is a Rajasthan-based incubator, did. This program happened for around 3 months back in Rajasthan, and the objective was to tap into all these small cities, Bikaner, Jodhpur, Jhalabad, Bharatpur, and we were able to find and figure out. The insight was very interesting, that the real innovation is happening in those areas. Even if you look at Chandigarh, Jaipur, Bombay, Bangalore, Pune, or maybe Delhi, Gurgaon, these areas, people are still building apps and trying to deliver either food or laundry or books at your doorstep, but nobody is innovating on the real sense. And until unless we are not able to commercialize the innovation, that is the key word here, nothing is going to happen. And the real innovation is happening in all these small areas. The biggest gap that I see is we have a pool of innovators, and there are a lot of schemes and programs and platforms of the government. There's something called a Honeybee Network, there's something called a GYAN, there is a National Innovation Foundation, which is supporting entrepreneurs, supporting innovators, but we do not have any mechanism through which we're able to commercialize these small innovators. A couple of them do get government subsidies and government fundings, but there's no sustainable way. And I believe the only right way to do is if we're able to chip in them with somebody who's an entrepreneur or have an entrepreneurial mindset. because unless we're not able to commercialize these innovations, we're of course going to lag behind in this entire race of, race of growth, and then, first competing internally and then competing at a global standard. So, just to conclude what I'm trying to say, the problems are many into the ecosystem, but I believe there are multiple ways we can solve it. The biggest support we can expect from the government side or from the advocacy side is to make sure that the policies created for the startups and entrepreneurs should be very rapidly implemented, rather than, just being announced and then waiting for them to get implemented. The rural innovation and the innovation at the grassroots should be commercialized. And the third and the very important problem is the mindset thing. Nothing is going to change if we're not able to change the mindset of the country, of the people, of the educators. I think mindset is the biggest barrier we as a country face today. If that's not going to change, nothing's going to happen. So with that, I would like to conclude my entire talk. I hope it was insightful. Thanks a lot once again, Kutch, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Dilnawaz Khan. You had pointed out some of the very good issues like startup, but I feel that now the thin line between the startup and SME is reducing day by day. The reason is that startups and SME both are facing similar challenges. Both are facing access to equity capital, both are facing the problems of working capital, both are facing the financial problem, both are facing the similar marketing problems. So that thin line is reducing day by day. And I will request everyone, because you are a young entrepreneur, you have given a lot of insight about this area. Yeah, there is, of course, Startup India Action Plan has come, but I don't know how many people have downloaded from DIPP website the Startup India Action Plan. How many people know the definition of the startup in the DIPP? How many people know what exemptions, what restrictions are available? So I will request everyone to please go to DIPP website, download the Startup Action Plan, see how you can get facilitated by that scheme. That awareness level is required. Second thing is that yes, whenever it is a feeling among the government sector also, whenever any scheme or program is announced, when it goes to implementation level, it loses its luster. And that happens there, and that needs to be looked into. But in the globalization point, I would like to say you talked about some mindsets, but you talked about that southern states are surpassing North Indian states. But I would like to share with you that in metro cities, you talked about Hyderabad, Bangalore. I will talk about Delhi also. Delhi is in North India, and I have seen whenever I have interacted with the college students, there are in a lot of symposium I have seen. Most of the students in second year, third year, they have already started either they have started their startups or they are associated with the startup because they want to get some action. They want to start their own startup. That mindset is available, and Punjab is also a land of entrepreneurs. So I think this mindset is available, and Punjab will also surpass Hyderabad and other cities because Punjabi people are very, I can say they're enterprising. They are covering half of the Canada. So we should not feel that only southern states, that mindset. Of course, at the tier 2, tier 3 city level, that mindset is not available. But other places in metros, it's not a big issue. Second is, I feel that in the globalization, now the trade liberalization has come, globalization has come. And one of the guys said, Chinese competitors are coming in India, they are damaging our industry. So this is a time that Indian SMEs will have to become internationally competitive. Otherwise, even if you are working wholly in India, wholly in domestic market, one day a competitor from China or somebody else will come with better product, with better value, with cheaper price, and he will take your entire business. So that is a big challenge, how they can become competitive. And there are many factors which affect, but government will have to make every SME, they have to help them, facilitate them to become competitive. Only then they will be sustainable. So now I will request our last panelist, Ms. Nazia, to express her viewpoint.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult to stay awake after a really nice lunch like that, but I'm glad we're all here. Based on all the things that we discussed since morning, I want to give you my perspective, not as an analyst, not as an academic, but as an entrepreneur, as somebody who has faced all of these, and what does this mean to me in application? I think the first question that we all discussed here is about the definition of MSME and how inclusive is the definition. So I want to tell you my story. I'm an international lawyer. I studied at Harvard. I graduated from Harvard Law School. I worked as a corporate lawyer in New York and London and Dubai. And at the age of 25, decided to settle in a tier 3 city in India, in Uttarakhand. Ultrakhand, Dehradun, where my colleague Pankaj is also from. And when I landed in Dehradun, and I was looking for a way to explain my business did not fit any definition in any book. So I run a socio-cultural center, something equivalent to the India Habitat Center in New Delhi, a culmination of the India Habitat and the India International Center, customized and packaged for a city like Dehradun. So when I first went to a bank for finance, the bank only understood hospitality as an industry or manufacturing as an industry. And hospitality for the bank, the lender, meant rooms and hotels. It did not understand anything beyond it. And the moment you get into projections, you start talking numbers in finance, the bank has its own perspective of what they think is feasible. So if I say I want to sell my room at 5,000 rupees a night, the bank comes back to you and says, but who stays in a room at 5,000 rupees a night? But now that does not apply when the JW Marriott applies for funding. But that applies when a small entrepreneur goes to the bank and says, but I want to start a boutique business and my business can work on these numbers. And they go, no, but we don't believe in it. But the moment I open my business, and then licensing. Now again, licensing. The parameters for licensing is so rigid. Again, there are recognized industries, so they only understand a manufacturing license, a license for a hotel, a license for selling food and beverages. But when you innovate a tangible product, when I say tangible product, I'm also talking about a space out of what people understand as a startup ideas. Because people, millennials especially, and students fresh out of business school think startups are all about technology, but in a country like ours, where we're talking about a tangible force of people, cities and villages that are not connected to the world, products that come from these cities, services that come from these cities and villages are not connected to the rest of the world. So why would I develop an application out of Dehradun when people in Dehradun need recreation and entertainment? So I want to cater to the need of the city. But the moment I try to get a license, the government does not have the breadth and the depth or the exposure to understand how to license a service that has never existed before. So licensing has been a huge challenge, and I see so Pankaj, who heads the Industries Association of India, works with manufacturing units, industries that have a definition, that fit into a definition. And I work with people who do not fit into any definition, but as an employer, I employ 300 people in a tier 2 city like Dehradun. So we support 300 families directly and maybe 1,000 vendors indirectly. And it's scaled from a 0 rupee business to a 25 crore business going up to a 100 crore business. So that's scalability. But who do I tell this to? There really is a big wall between the government, between industry leaders, and between businesses like mine. And I think I speak for all of my friends in Dehradun, in other cities, people who have decided to do something new, something that they believe in, but do not fit into the regulatory framework because they're not in the definition. So when we talk about definition, I think my first suggestion is we really need to reevaluate that definition and redefine the moment we talk about a micro, small, or a medium enterprise. Now, like I said, so you have industries in Dehradun, you have industries in the suburbs. You have Haridwar as an industrial area. You have the Selakwi industrial area. You have Udham Singh Nagar. But then there's the rest of the state that is being run not by industries, not by manufacturing units, but by all these little stores and cafes and restaurants and hotels and stores and retail stores, you name it. Businesses that are really, they're lost in a hollow, without a name, without a definition, without an association, without a platform. And in those hollows, the largest revenue for the state is being generated. A lot of people talk about migration in Uttarakhand. But now imagine if we were not there as an employer, if these cafes did not exist, I don't know where the people who are currently there in Dehradun would have gone. All the chefs, all the cooks, all the plumbers, all the electricians, where would they have gone? All these boys who work in the service industry, where would they have gone? And I don't think the government understands it. I do not think they understand it. Even when they talk about tourism as a sector, I do not think they understand tourism. Earlier in April, there was a ban that came on licensing bars. And it was a blanket ban. It said that you can't have a bar on a national highway or a state highway. Now you know the history of roads in India, how you make roads in India. What used to be a village is now a national highway. It's neither the villager's fault nor the government's fault, but find a solution that is practical, logical, and has some common sense to it. You know, now you want to make a city road a highway, and then you want to bring a blanket policy that says every business on this has to be categorized in X, Y, and Z manner. You're eliminating, you're not including, you're eliminating a large number of people who are employers and who generate revenue, and concrete revenue. So, we talk about countries like Switzerland. Why do you need a 40-feet road to build a hotel? If people have traveled to Europe, Europe has very tiny, very narrow cobble streets. And you walk up and you have tiny cars. No hotel in Switzerland is on a 40-feet wide street. So why is it that our government, and in a hill state like Uttarakhand, why do you want a 40-feet road? Look at the safety measures that you want to put in place and find a flexible way to make things work. Really, to make things work. So my story, when I, as an entrepreneur, started out in Uttarakhand, and I think even now, I think it's a story demanding respect. It's a story of lack of respect. The government does not respect an employer. And I think that is the story of the entrepreneur in India. A fundamental lack of respect. When I look at this culture, everywhere I see people saying, having money is a bad thing. And making money is a bad thing. If having money and making money is a bad thing, what are you talking about? What is GDP? You know, what are you talking about? You talk about unemployment, you talk about labor issues, you talk about education as an issue. Every issue that you talk about fundamentally goes down to this one thing, which is money as a resource. And if you're going to say in this culture that money is a bad thing, how are you going to get around everything else? So now when the lawmaker meets you, and especially politicians, they think that you're making money and it's a bad thing. So I need to have some of it first to make things happen for you. And that's where the whole problem of corruption comes up. You know, give me some of it because you're making a lot of it. Without any respect for the fact, it's not a collective mindset. It's not a community mindset. The lawmaker does not look at you as an ally or a friend in the whole development process, or in the process of growth, or in the growth story. The lawmaker looks at you as somebody who is bad. You know, there is something wrong. This is not a friendly relationship. The relationship between the entrepreneur and the government is not a friendly relationship. The second thing I want to quickly talk about is policy. So I hear this all the time, okay, policy, we need more policy. So I want to talk about Uttarakhand specifically. The whole agitation, a very bloody, a very violent agitation led to what is today Uttarakhand. Broken from UP, and they said we want a new state because the policies of Uttar Pradesh do not really help us. We're a hill state and we're really backward, so we need our own policy. So if you need your own policy, the first thing you need to understand is you need to have your own legislation. You need to make your own laws. And it's been more than 15 years, and if you go back to Uttarakhand and look at the laws, I don't think they have they have changed enough laws, or that they have made enough laws diverting from the laws that they had during the time of Uttar Pradesh. So including, say, something as simple as the construction law. You know, you have authorities like the Mussoorie Dehradun Development Authority, you have the Haridwar Development Authority. Now, all of these laws date from the time of when Uttarakhand or these cities belonged to Uttar Pradesh. So again, what is happening? Like, if you ask me, I'm at a loss. What is happening? Who is thinking? And who is thinking what? And is anybody thinking? And the third thing I want to talk about is really, you know, the bureaucrats of India. Just because somebody passed a test, and a parochial test, a test that is long outdated, I don't think that person or that system of people are competitive enough to lead policy and legislation and ideas and growth in India. You know, if our intention and if our goal, our purpose and our objective is growth, is inclusion, is the understanding of all of these phenomena, one needs to ally with the knowledge of the people, the knowledge of the practitioner, the knowledge of the entrepreneur, the knowledge of the person on ground. Not the idea that comes from a book because a bureaucrat read it somewhere. You know, the Teri Lake is a huge example. They've been trying to make it a spot for tourism, but unfortunately nothing's happened until now. But why? The reason why it is like that is because the bureaucrat heading the Department of Tourism does not know how to get it going. He does not know how to include the local community. He does not know how to make a sustainable tourism model, something that entices people from all over the world to come and spend time in Tiri. So what he does is an annual parasailing thing over the lake, which is redundant. Because you ask the people in the villages and they will tell you that there are hikers and trekkers who come from Israel and Germany and France and live in their villages and live in their homes and spend time there. I think my friends in Israel know more about Uttarakhand than anybody else I know in Uttarakhand. And they've been coming to Uttarakhand for the past 30 years. And they know every village. They also know every village in Himachal. And they can tell me more about Gangotri and Yamunotri than anybody else. More than the bureaucrat who sits in the Department of Tourism. So that is something, again, that I have a problem with, you know. And now, everybody spoke about finance, and I have to tell you this, India has a real problem with finance. Again, because of a cultural misunderstanding about the term finance. We're trying to apply economics in a country that is culturally restrained and bound by notions of money that they're not able to break through. So as an entrepreneur, when I first started, I had to pay 150% on my first capital. 150% against a 4% or an 8%. An 8% is an obnoxious amount to pay in the United States. A 4% is a very reasonable amount. In India, because banks don't lend, we don't have institutions that lend, especially to new businesses, our capital cost is anything from 150% or higher or lower, which is huge. If I have to pay 150 rupees on every 100 rupee that I take from a lender, there is something wrong with this market. And yet, if I am making profits, then there's something really wrong with this market. You know, there's something really wrong in the way we're working around all of these things. And then we talked about employability and employment. So I've been wanting to run this high quality business. So I run 4 restaurants in this cultural center. We work mostly with arts and allied fields, fishing. So all of these little hollows, they're invisible businesses that make a lot of money and that employ a lot of people and that generate income for a lot of sectors. Yet invisible, no recognition. So when I wanted to employ staff in my restaurant, now people who are married can afford to train their staff because they have an ecosystem that they built over the years. The ITC can afford to do that. Can a small restaurant afford to do that? So that's where my story comes from. So we invested heavily in technology, heavily in training. And the moment we started training these folks, we realized if you're serving Italian food, they don't know where Italy is. The concept of Italy does not exist for somebody who serves you Italian food. So we have to go back and teach them geography, and we have to teach them language. So that also speaks for the disconnect between what institutions provide in the name of education. There are, I think, over 100 hotel management institutes just in that region. Now, none of these hotel management institutes teach geography. If you don't know geography, how do you know food? And forget international food. How do you even know the difference between a misti roti and a tandoori naan? So that's the gap in our education system. And that's what, again, the government does not know about it because nobody tells the government, or the government is not asking the right people. There is that gap. And when entrepreneurs start businesses, that's when they start facing these issues. The gentleman who came from Jindal Global University said the same thing. He said, Sodexo, which is an international catering company, is not able to do it in India when they do it in New York and when they do it in Washington. Why are they not able to do it in Sonipat? Okay, so I have another 2 minutes. And so what did I do? I also want to tell you the solution. What I finally had to do is learn what Reliance did. And the biggest story for me from Reliance is the story of backward integration. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this. So Reliance started off as a cloth manufacturing company, which then got into petrochemicals because they wanted to reduce the cost of manufacturing. So now I have to follow a similar approach and go from a service provider in the F&B industry, in the food and beverage industry, and start my own hospitality institutions to be able to source manpower who understand the quality of F&B services that I want to provide. So that's my story again. Those are my learnings from the industry. And this is in spite of the fact that there is a very successful skills program that the government is running, just that the two don't meet. I was telling Rahul this yesterday, the problem, you can't get to the problem because I'm speaking Chinese and the government is speaking Greek. And we're trying to negotiate. How do we negotiate? We're not even converging on a point, a common point. Since this is my last minute, I want to talk about the last point, which is gender inclusiveness or gender neutrality, which I think is very relevant because when people see women entrepreneurs, they think it's all about a tailoring unit. And this is another thing that I constantly face when I meet bureaucrats and decision makers. Oh yeah, we're working in scale and women are empowered. We bought them a sewing machine and they made 100 jackets and it's all great. I think women are mainstream, and there are women entrepreneurs in this economy who do mainstream businesses. I do, and I run a mainstream business. I am not playing with the idea of entrepreneurship. I am serious about it. And there are many women entrepreneurs like me who are serious about business. We mean business, we mean money, we mean change, we mean growth, we mean development. So it's really time that the WCD, when it's a woman entrepreneur, they want to send us to the women and child development sector, not to the industries minister. Go speak to the WCD minister. Why should I speak to the WCD minister? I'm an entrepreneur, I want to talk to the industries minister, not to the WCD minister. I also face a similar problem with the banker. So the country, I think I should conclude, but last story. We were applying for a finance for the company, and we were in discussions with the country head of India Bulls. So I spoke to him and he said, can I speak to your partner? So I had to take my husband along, sit in a meeting, and in that meeting tell him, look, this is my husband, I'm happy to introduce you to him, but this is my business, and I own this business, so if you have questions, please call me, not him. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nazia. You are the only person, I think, who has elaborated service sector. as well as hospitality industry. And a lot of myths you have addressed. Of course, in the service sector, only 30% of the active population is there, but the contribution is more than 65% in country's GDP. So that is a matter of pride for service sector. And then you talked about that inclusive growth. Of course, MSME sectors, whether they are in manufacturing or in service industries, 38%, 37 or 38% of the enterprise are in manufacturing, remaining are in service sector. So if we have to achieve the inclusive agenda of our country, that is that we call inclusive growth, that is only possible if we focus on MSME sector. Then you also talked about cost of finance. Of course, cost of finance is very high, and there's a lot of things which need to be done, especially for women empowerment. And I know a lot of women and entrepreneurs, you have a support of your husband, but certain ladies are there who don't have any, you told that, and that you had gone there. But I have seen many entrepreneurs, who are struggling, and of course, I met them 6 years back when I was in NSIC. Today, when I met them after 8 years, 7 years, I'm very sorry to say they have faced a lot of problems. They are still struggling. And I'll just come out. And the basic problems, a lot of things which need to be done at the ground level. They first of all, they are facing the problem of a proper office. They don't have the proper office. Then when they manufacture, I know they have manufactured a product like chocolates. Then they don't have a proper shelf where they can display that product. Then they are facing the cost of high finance. So a lot of support at the ground level is required. A lot of self-help groups are required. So that we also strongly feel. And we also congratulate you and wish you for whatever level you have achieved so far, and wish you greater heights, so that you should become an example for the other women. And now in every organization, one independent director needs to be a lady. So that so I think it is a warning. So this way I also conclude my session. Thank you. So we can start from left to right.
To you, facing so much problems, still you are surviving and surviving with the full confidence. Really, it's great to have you here, and it's totally inspirational. Many of the points have been covered, but solution have been the least. I've got few points to be discussed. First of all, the point which has been left by all the panelists, that is especially the SMEs. I leave apart the medium scale industry. SMEs don't have different functional groups. Functional groups, I mean to say, they doesn't have a different department, a separate department as an HR. They doesn't have a production department. They doesn't have marketing department. They don't hold accounts department. And the point was there that these, especially the MSMEs, but I must say these SMEs, the point has been raised in the presentation that they lack the qualifications, they lack the exact upliftment. How can one entrepreneur be master of all the trades? It's highly impossible. What I think here, the government should play a role. Government should look for the marketing, the HR, the account systems of the entrepreneurs. If at all the government is not playing their role, I think the associations should do something in this respect. We make the committees in different organizations, different industrial organizations, and those committees should be, some committees should be like this only, HR committee, accounts committee, and all those who may take care of the things, the problems being faced by the small and micro entrepreneurs in this respect. Then the case comes, I definitely appreciate Uttarakhand, especially Pankajji, who has introduced flat system for the industry. But sorry to say, I must take axe on our own neck. That is, in our industrial areas, we get the land on subsidized rates. Then why government allow us to sell it in the open market? See, non-availability of the land, high prices of the land, they come only when the land trader pitches in. At present, what is happening, I'm sorry if at all some property consultant or a property dealer is sitting over here in this forum, but it is sorry state of affair when these people pitch in, they grab the lands, they make the multi-story buildings, give them on rent, or they shuffle the lands and make the money from that, and in this way, the dead investment and fixed cost of the industry rises, due to which we or the governments float the programs like Punjab Invest and all those, say, bring industry over here. When the fixed cost and dead investment is so much high, how can the industry come? And that definitely lies in the hands of government, that they shouldn't allow we people to sell their subsidized land given to us in open market. This is prevalent example in Madhya Pradesh also. They don't allow the entrepreneurs to sell their subsidized lands in open market. That's why you can have 1 klan land in their prescribed industrial area at 40,000 only. So it has to be adopted by each and every government. And one thing more I want to place in this forum, that we have got our industrial organizations that are basically regional level, not only even regional level, rather city level only. We should have a consortium of all the associations at the state level, then at the single way at the center level, at the national level, so that each and every voice or ours is heard with the big blow. That could make a big impact. And I definitely back you, ma'am, that an IAS officer should not be there to decide about our industry. This is the big pain area. Industry minister, industry secretary, director of industries has to be from the entrepreneurs itself, and that has to be taken over to the government. Thank you so much, and sorry for my hard words.
Now we go to the next question, because lastly it's because he has many points, and it will not be covered by one person, it will be covered by 2-3 panelists. So please, yeah.
आई एम ए.एल. अग्रवाल, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ हरियाणा चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स एंड इंडस्ट्री। मेरे स्पेसिफिक पॉइंट हैं, देखिए आज एक सोच का विषय ये हो गया कि जो नए एंटरप्रेन्योर हैं, हमारे बच्चे हैं, वो एमएसएमई फैक्ट्री में आना नहीं चाहते। वो कहते हैं फैक्ट्री मीन्स फ्रैक्चर। क्या है, जब हमारी हालत देखते हैं एमएसएमई को, जितने रूल्स रेगुलेशन है, इतने रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म है, जैसे पंकज जी ने ठीक बताया, रेगुलेटरी मैकेनिज्म इतने ज़्यादा हैं तो उसको पार करना बड़ा मुश्किल है। व्हाट प्रिसाइजली क्या है, जैसे ये एनपीए है, डीआरटी में आप कभी जाइए, वहाँ पर इतना भीड़ खड़े होने के लिए जगह नहीं, इतने वकील और इतने वो हैं, इतने ज़्यादा एनपीए हो गए। 90 डेज का वाकई जीएसटी में जब 180 दिन का प्रावधान है, तो ये 180 दिन का एनपीए में क्यों नहीं है? देखो वर्ल्ड के नॉर्म्स एनपीए के तो लगा दिए, वर्ल्ड का रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट भी लगाओ। रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट तो एमएसएमई को 12, 13, 14% मिलता है। वर्किंग कैपिटल जो है मिलता नहीं है एज पर दी रिकमेंडेशंस। अच्छा, आरबीआई की जो हाई एम्पावर्ड कमेटी मीटिंग होती है, ये ढींडसा साहब बैठे हैं, अकेले होते हैं, ये 98% बैंकर्स होते हैं। एक बार हमने सीआईआई में बोल दिया था, जो उनका जो नॉर्म्स है, जो एम्पावर्ड कमेटी की जो मिनट्स हैं, आप बत्रा साहब पढ़ के देखिए उनको, कितने ज़्यादा यूनिट सिख हैं। 2542 यूनिट पंजाब में सिख हैं, वायबल 10 यूनिट वायबल। यानी ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? आफ्टर ऑल जब बैंक ने फाइनेंस किया है, उसकी वायबिलिटी देखने के बाद ही फाइनेंस किया है, सीएमए डाटा ले लिया, ये ले लिया, वो ले लिया, तो वो जब वायबल है। नर्सिंग तो होती नहीं है, रोड इज़ वेरी स्लिपरी फॉर एमएसएमई। वो कहते हैं जाता है जाने दो इसको, कोई बात नहीं। तो इसलिए एमएसएमई का जब तक माइंड सेट ठीक नहीं होगा ना, ब्रांच मैनेजर्स का ऊपर लेवल तक का माइंड सेट ही ठीक नहीं है, नर्सिंग तो होती नहीं है, उसका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है स्मॉल स्केल का, दैट गोज वेस्ट। तो इसलिए ये कई फोरम पे बातें चीतें होती हैं, लेकिन पता नहीं क्या बात है, ये फैसला होता ही नहीं है। एक बात हम आपको बताएं, हर साल एवरी ईयर द बैंक इज डूइंग द क्रेडिट रेटिंग फॉर रिन्यूअल ऑफ आवर वर्किंग कैपिटल लिमिट्स. But the problem is that they don't give the sheet of performa, credit rating performa to us. भाई चार्ज लगा लो उसके 100 रुपये 500 रुपये. जो हमारे नंबर हैं, जैसे कोई बच्चा इम्तिहान देता है उसको मार्कशीट तो मिलती है, तो हमें वो देते नहीं है. वो कहते हैं इट इज़ ए मैटर ऑफ कमर्शियल कॉन्फिडेंस. भाई क्या कॉन्फिडेंस रह गया? करंट रेशो, डेट इक्विटी रेशो, ये रेशो 10-12 रेशो निकाल के 50 नंबर में वो नंबर लगाते हैं. भाई हमारे 40 नंबर आए, 48 नंबर आए, क्रेडिट रेटिंग क्या है? जो फील्ड ऑफिसर है वो है ना बैंक की तरफ खींचते हैं. एक माइंडसेट ये है सरकारी अफसरों का कि हम अलग हैं, वो अलग हैं. जब तक वो उनका माइंडसेट हमारे बीच में एकदम इंटरमिक्स नहीं हो जाते कि हाँ ये हमारे बीच में है, हम इनके हित की बात करें, वो माइंडसेट नहीं है. वो माइंडसेट है हमारे इसमें बात करें. तो ये मेरे एक रॉ मटेरियल का पॉइंट है. देखिए बता रहा था, जितना रॉ मटेरियल है आयरन स्टील, वो सारा 2-3 आदमी वो कॉर्नर कर लेते हैं. 35 JSW JSPM में क्या प्रावधान है? 35% तो एडवांस दो, बुकिंग कराओ, 1 महीने बाद 65% दो, फिर डिस्पैच होएगा. डिस्पैच होएगा तो 5-5, 6-6 हज़ार टन जो ट्रेडर है ना लुधियाने बैठे, उनको मिल जाता है. स्मॉल स्केल को मेरे को 50 टन मटेरियल चाहिए, वायर रॉड चाहिए या सरिया पत्ती जो चाहिए, हमें नहीं मिलता. JSW JSPL का ये रूल है. चंडीगढ़ में कोई स्टॉक यार्ड ही नहीं है इनका, लुधियाना में है, और एक ही व्यापारी जो है 5-5, 6-6 हज़ार टन ले लेता है, उसके पीछे पीछे घूमे जाओ. तो बेसिकली स्मॉल स्केल एंटरप्रेन्योर की इतनी ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम है. डिलेड पेमेंट के बारे में आर्बिट्रेशन का फैसला हो गया, आर्बिट्रेटर ने अवार्ड दे दिया, अवार्ड इज नॉट बीइंग इंप्लीमेंटेड. आर्बिट्रेटर का अवार्ड क्या करेगा? हम बत्रा साहब कुछ नहीं मांगते. जो हमारा प्रोविजन लॉ में दिया हुआ है अगर वो हो जाए ना, 80% प्रॉब्लम हमारी सॉल्व है. हमें जो प्रावधान है रूल में, MSMED एक्ट 2006 में 45 दिन में हमारी पैसे मिलने चाहिए, नहीं तो 27% ब्याज दे दो, सीधी बात. अब वो सब कुछ हो गया. इसलिए रूल्स को इंप्लीमेंट कराने के लिए कोई यहाँ पर ऐसा कोई ऐसी मतलब कोई बॉडी होनी चाहिए. एक कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज मिसिंग है.
I will request Cuts International to please also involve DIC general managers, MSMED next time, so that they have actual ground level problem. They are the people who are sitting there. So can I go for the next?
Basically कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज आर मिसिंग. नए एंटरप्रेन्योर ने क्या प्रोडक्ट बनाना है, कहाँ से पैसे लेना है, कोई कंसल्टेंसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नहीं है. इसलिए इसे जो फर्स्ट जनरेशन एंटरप्रेन्योर है वो दे आर डाइंग डाउन. ये वक्त आ गया है उनको बचाने के लिए. कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज दीजिए, और ये जो फाइनेंस है और है ये नर्सिंग है, हम लोगों को बेचारे समझ के हमारा समाधान कीजिए MSME को अगर बचाना है, नहीं तो ये गया.
थैंक यू.
सीधे सब.
थैंक यू सर. एनी अदर क्वेश्चन?
Yeah, I'm Enma, I'm a business coach. I just want to first say kudos to you, Nazia, because I think what your story is absolutely incredible and inspirational. And I also can resonate with what Dil Nawaz said, and I'm giving, there's a perspective of what I'm saying. After living in Bombay for 15 years, I've come back to Chandigarh. And Mr. Batra, against what you said, my only suggestion is that I don't think we can change the government, but I think we can change our mindset. And when Dil Nawaz gave his view, the answer to which it was, Delhi wale bhi bahut अच्छे हैं, लेकिन South से ज़्यादा पंजाबी भी बहुत great है. But my point is, I think we need to be open to change. We need to be open to change. We need to adapt to different timings. The ideas with the Punjabi is great. The mindset and the entrepreneurial spirit of the Punjabis is great. But I think where the Punjabis need to change is they need to be stop being so rigid. And I'm saying it because I'm a Punjabi, but because I've gone out, I feel we need to adapt to the changing times. And that's what we need to do, because that's in our control. What government does is not in our control, because in another year, the government might change, but we cannot keep on shutting down because the government has changed. That's my
That's a big point.
2 bits.
Thank you. Any other question? Last one.
Hello everyone.
I presume. A student, I think last question we can take. Last question only, a student. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Actually, I want to ask that we are the privatized economy, and at the same time, we are asking government for subsidies, and at the same time, we are talking about the startups. So why are we dependent upon the government for the subsidies and finance? Why can't we go for crowdfunding at this? Like we have the option of crowdfunding in today's.
Good point. Thank you. Now we are going to answer this. Cover it up. Yeah.
Yeah, just Dil Nawaz in particular. We spoke about startups and fostering their growth, especially in the digital technology sector. This should certainly be done. It is very important. But side by side, do you think we also need to gauge the level of awareness and knowledge of startup and entrepreneurs to new age challenges? These could be related to data protection or respect towards intellectual property when it comes to developing mobile apps or new technologies, etc. So do you think there is a need to build capacities and maybe initiate any training programs or capacity building exercises need to be done for startup entrepreneurs in particular to help them be better capacitated towards facing these challenges and overcoming them, especially considering the amount of IP litigation happening in India revolving around technology, or maybe the data leakages that have been happening these days and the debate around data protection that has been happening. So would just like to take your view on that. Thank you.
So,
It's now one by one.
yeah, am I audible? Okay, is it loud enough? Okay, first, thanks a lot for the question and thanks a lot for very interesting insights. So I have, couple of points to touch upon. I'll be really very short, but see, the biggest problem and what you pointed out is absolutely right. We have a very closed mindset, and I have a question for you, before I jump onto the answer. I personally work with a lot of small businesses and MSMEs, and when I say the word MSMEs, yes, I'm talking about the people who run manufacturing companies, who run production houses, handicrafts, textile, those sort of people, and I'm not talking about technology companies, right? How many of you have, rather than talking about that this is the problem, that is the problem, and government is to be blamed, have looked for the solution? You really pointed out that marketing is a problem. Yes, it is for everybody. Sales is a problem. Yes, it is for everybody. Policy is a problem. Consultation is a problem. There are so many companies and startups and young companies out there who are solving these problems. So I'll give you, one simple example, and that is why I started this entire thing. And I absolutely agree with you when you said that you have to do backward integration. I started my first company back in 2008, and it was a technology company. And for 3 to 4 years, 5 years, we had a lot of problem with the tech talent. We were not able to hire good quality tech talent. I started my own training institute to start training tech talent. And I was then.
That involves revenue. That's not with the SMEs.
No.
That is the issue.
See, it's an infinite loop. Sir, it's an infinite loop. We can always keep on.
I think, Dilnaz,
in fact, I'll answer his question first. Please. Yeah.
You got it on the wrong side. Let me answer your question about the getting some consultation support. Look, what we did, we have set up a MSME Solution Center in Dehradun. And there we requested a lot of retired people, a knowledge pool to come and support the MSMEs. And they are doing it on a voluntary basis. Maybe as a chamber, you can request a lot of people who are around you who may have retired from different services. You can ask them, they'll come and support you. They are doing it at no cost or a very minimal cost. So that could be one of the ways to take your question. The other thing is, regarding you mentioned of the credit, the sheet on which they calculate the rate of interest for you, that is the credit rating. You mentioned the banks keep it confidential and they are not sharing it. We took up this issue and there is nothing confidential. If they are going to charge you something, they are going to do calculations based on that, so they have to share it with you. They have to show it to you how they have reached that calculation, how they are basically subjecting that particular rate of interest on you, they have to show it to you. There is nothing confidential. You can put RTI application, they are going to provide you that. And this we have already done it in Uttarakhand for many industries.
Have you got some document in that?
Yeah, I can share the RTI. Yeah, I can share you the RTI application, but I won't share the sheet, but I'll share the reply with you. Reply what I received containing that sheet, but I won't share that sheet because those are company specific. Okay, so you mentioned about a lot of credit related issues. Are you not having a state level RBI empowered committee meetings regularly? Yes. So why are you not taking up these issues? If they're not being addressed there, take them to the institutional committee meeting which is being organized at the Mumbai at the central level. Or you can send it to me because I am part of that committee. So I can take up because your issues and our issues are similar. So, any case, if you have some problems. The other thing is you mentioned about selling of land. See, I am one of the vocal this thing, and I have my friends from Dehradun also. I never allow my industrial estate to be self-owned. Get it self-owned. There are people, because all my industrial estates are leased owned, and people ask me to get them converted into self-owned. I oppose it. And the very reason is, the moment I get them self-owned, people are going to sell those lands. So you should also take it up, let them remain leasehold. So that way, the land is not going to get sold, and your industrial estates are going to remain cheap, and they will only be used for industrial activity and for no other activity. The moment you get them converted into self-owned, people are going to sell it off, there won't be any control, and they will be used for other activities other than industrial activity. So that's another. Grievance redressal. UP has a system, Udyog Bandhu. We have a system, Udyog Mitra. So why don't you get it established in your state? We have a three-tier system, district level, then the state level, empowered committee under the chief secretary, and the third one is under the chief minister. So you should also, we can send you the model, you should look at it. So try and get your order and have it functional at the district level. So get your grievances redressed through those. Okay, thank you.
Before I would also like to, when you mentioned about performance and credit rating scheme, what I observed that sometimes that rating has been, even then bank does their own loan rating. That should not happen. That should not happen. RBI should allow that performance.
To be made known to them.
Once rating has been done, then loan should be sanctioned. Why there should be separate loan rating? Otherwise, your money is wasted, na.
Every year it is happening.
Basically, regional director of RBI has refused this thing. We were there in the same meeting. He refused himself.
This is where your association, this is where the association role is there. That advocacy is required.